you ready to raise your game at Fort Union Military Academy? Sometimes described as the West Point of high schools, Fort Union is a leading college preparatory Christian boarding school for young men grounded in the structure of discipline of the traditional military academy model, and scholarships are available. Fort Union Military Academy's athletic program has produced hundreds of college and professional athletes, including 6 Olympians, 2 Heisman Trophy winners, and more than 120 NFL players. Fort Union Military Academy is a private school and is independent of any direct military affiliation or obligation. Schedule a tour and get started on your journey today by visiting fortunion.com. Fort Union Military Academy. Body, mind, spirit.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the HoopWise Podcast, part of New England Basketball Journal. I'm Ethan Fuller, as always. No Steve Hewitt today, but I have replaced him for this episode with a guest. I'm really excited. We recently wrote the cover story for our fall magazine, which is out now. You can order it. The cover story was about Bella Owumi, and in that story, she references that she is doing some work with mindset coach Scott Papek of Max Out Mindset. And so I was thinking about that, and I thought, the more I thought about it, I thought it'd be really interesting to get Scott on the podcast. And very quick turnaround, Scott Papek is in the studio with us, or online at least. So Scott, thank you so much for joining. How's your summer been?
It's been great. It really just ended with all the final AAU circuits the end of July. So it's been nice. I'll have like a good month and a half and then AAU will start up here again. And it's kind of the regroup because I go from honestly September all the way till July. But it's just a bunch of things I've been setting to the side that I get to grind on. And I actually love doing the work of getting better of how to train what I do. So I spend a lot of time training too.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think it's a constant improvement process in a lot of what we do. And especially for us too, who are in the basketball space, but obviously are not players. We still we work on our craft too. So yeah, thank you, Scott, for joining us. I think you're going to have some great advice just for some of the young athletes and families that subscribe to us. I think there is never too much of a conversation that can be had about approaching mental health and mindset coaching and sports psychology and all of those different sectors. So I've got a bunch of questions to ask you. The first, just to kind of give some folks background on you, you have a very interesting career path and pivot that I wanted to ask about. You actually were in the music industry before this as an audio engineer. Can you explain to us what you did before and then what prompted your career change?
So funny thinking about this morning. It took me back to when I was 13 years old, sitting in a basement in Omaha, Nebraska, watching the Grammy Awards. And here's this guy that's singing Billie Jean and does the moonwalk for the first time. And I'm like, what is that? It blew me away so much that I didn't understand what I was like, whatever that is, I need to be a part of that. I knew I was never going to be a musician. That's just not who I am, even though I can make a song by ear only. I don't know how to read music. So I was living in Omaha, Nebraska. I was a sophomore in college. I'd been trying to get an internship with a local radio station for a very long time, for about 2 years. Back then, there was no social media. So I was picking up the phone and calling and trying to get jobs all the time. And after 267, a company finally said, I'll bring you in, let you work for free, and you will come in and you will basically pick up my food and go pick up my dry cleaning. And I said, good. So I started training at a local radio station. I knew exactly the first day in. That's what I wanted to do, but I didn't know what it was. I did not have that vision of who I wanted to be, but when I just knew I wanted to be a part of something. And to not only get into it, I worked free for 3 years and I did every job within that. And then I ended up moving to Albuquerque for another job. And then I ended up in California where I did many things, which there's a lot of dots that connect with sports and music. But I worked in radio stations. I was a music director. I was an imaging director, which made everything you heard between songs. I've done voiceovers. And then I did a little bit of A&R where I would sit in an office and listen to really bad recordings on a very slow internet back on the time of bands trying to be signed. And we would go out. There was a few of us that worked under a top A&R guy, and he would send us to go watch bands every night. And we would have to give reports. So basically I was a scout. I was a scout at that time of trying to find we knew they were good. If we were coming to see you, we knew you were good. And that's where I really became obsessed with understanding talent in human behavior. because you go watch all these shows. You see so many different things. Like sometimes I'd be like, the drummer's the rock star here. Like it's not the lead singer, and then we would have to give feedback and we'd have to go, well, if they did this, this, and this, and this, right? So like, I think I started my craft really with human behavior in that space. And then I became obsessed being in the business of, getting in the music business is not easy at all. Very hard. There's just a lot of passionate grinders in there that are just grinding every day. And that's who I was. I'm never like the most talented, but I committed to doing whatever it took and not worried about money, because you were not going to make money when you're going up the ladder to do it. And I just became obsessed with understanding why some humans make it and why some don't. So I worked in it for about 20 years and then I transitioned out on my own terms. The recession hit and I was in San Diego at the time. It just wasn't fun anymore. So that's kind of where it ended. Any questions in there?
No, thank you. That was a very detailed timeline. I think this was a question I wanted to ask anyway, but when you kind of think back about both industries, you've already mentioned some parallels about how competitive the music industry is. And obviously that overlaps with sports a lot, and how there's so many people that are working hard that aren't always going to make it to the top every time. And that's the same in sports a lot. I guess when you think back to observing bands or artists as a scout and versus like watching a lot of basketball or whatever sport now, do you see a lot of parallels in what artists and bands deal with that athletes also deal with?
It's a different time today compared to when I was really in it, even though it was starting to evolve with social media. That is bands could go play. There was nothing allowed in there. There was no cameras, no phones, like nothing, right? And so they would just be able to go in there, do their show, and then there'd be a newspaper story about it the next day. So the biggest thing is all of the voices and reviews that are going on in real time all the time. So that is a very big challenge, but back in the day, that wasn't such a challenge. The parallel between greatness in whatever it is, there is definitely a pattern, and it is not looking for the hack. It is literally being clear on who you want to be, where you want to go, how do you got to train to get there, and what are the mental skills you need to get there. And then do you rearrange your day every day to be your best? And if it's not perfect, but at the end of the day, did I get better or did I not? But what are we measuring on what we got better? We sold a bunch of records. We made a bunch of points. We won a game. That is where where people would get in trouble, because we're letting things we can't control dictate our success. So knowing who you are and having a self-awareness and a vision and knocking all the rest of the stuff out of the way and just being great at that is really a parallel I see in all high performance.
That's really interesting. And yeah, that's a perspective that I wouldn't have initially thought about, and I don't think most people think about a lot. So thank you for that. Then I guess for you, can you describe, again, you listed on your site are a mindset coach. And I'm sure there are differences between being a mindset coach versus like an officially labeled sports psychologist. And then there's a bunch of nuance within some of these different titles. Can you describe, just as a surface level to get us started, what you do now and what you work with athletes and teams on?
Great question. So I'm not a sports psychologist, but we do teach through positive psychology. I am certified in that. That doesn't mean I don't have the credentials. I am not a doctor. I have taken some mental health stuff also, because it is razor thin and trying to be your best and the mental health. But I do not, and none of my team supports mental health of that. We will recommend. The founder of the Max Out Mindset and my mentor is a trained psychiatrist. He's been doing it for a very long time. Cool story about him. He was a psychiatrist at the time. 9/11 hit. He was in North Dakota. That's where the fighter pilots were. They brought him on and said, you need to train these to be able to handle pressure at a high level. And here's the kick, you cannot give them medication. So that was the first time he started studying how can you do this and how to do it. But we don't deal with mental health. We deal with basically, for me, who you are, who you want to be, what do we got to do? And then I'm going to hold you accountable. And if you don't want to be held accountable, I'm not the person for you. We like to call them battle buddies. Everyone needs a battle buddy that can get in the mud with you when it's hard, when it's great, but keep you climbing that mountain or whatever you have to do. Now, I have two partners, Dr. Larry Whitman, and then Just Connect has her master's in sports psychology. So, but we all teach through the same framework.
Mm.
My education has nothing to do with training mindset. My life, my experience has been everything I've needed to know to be able to train. I know what works for a very long time. And not only that, I live the high performance. It's like the 1% also, but then to make it 20 years is like 0.01. And that's not me saying I'm great at anything, but I have the scars. I have a lot of scars from that. And there was a lot of work when I stepped away, which is how I ended up connecting with my team to get to where I am today. So
Yeah.
I've kind of lived it in all levels, so the mindset training is really to narrow that down, is to really get dialed in. We have some really cool ways to show you the ingredients of confidence. And then we're going to see what's hurting and what's helping it and how we're going to get an inch better tomorrow. And then how do we track it? Right. And then I always show one slide with like 10 to 12 different stressors of like, hey, what's getting in your way of playing your best? And every athlete's like, maybe all of them. Like they just don't, there's no realization of like, oh my God, I never thought of it that way. And then we literally just go, all right, let's create a plan and let's work on it. Sports psychology, yes, we'll deal with a little bit more mental health stuff, but our company does not.
Got it. No, I think that's a very important distinguishing just explanation from you. And so you've already mentioned I'm going to kind of skip ahead. You mentioned the chart that you put out with 10 to 20 stressors and how it obviously seems to resonate with a lot of different athletes. You don't have to list all 10 to 20, but maybe 3-ish. You can mention a little more if you want. Like, what are the most common ones, especially today for younger athletes as they are trying to make it to whatever goals that they have?
Give me one or two you think would be.
Okay. Social media has got to be a popular one. And especially, I guess, comparing yourself to other athletes would be up there, I would assume. I would guess maybe time commitment and how that affects other parts of your life. I don't know if that would fit in there. Those would be kind of my 2 to start.
Comparison's way up there. That's tricky these days. That's the biggest stressor that has evolved over the years. Then that's where the phones and everything and the social media, that's where it does. Like, look, I'm not going to blame the athletes these days and say, get off your phone. It's just not reality. But it's like, if you don't know who you are and where you're going, like you're going to let social media control your emotions. And that's just not great. So yes, expectations is up there a lot, wherever that comes from. And there's a lot of different places that comes from. Which adds all the pressure in the world. Right. So your 3 is right in there with that. But then there is other life stressors like balance, and then is my identity tied to just being a good player? Because a bad game feels like you're a bad human. And sometimes that emotion can stay in until you play next or you redeem yourself. And that's just one roller coaster that's not fun. And basketball is what we do. And if you're really good at it, awesome. And if you want to be your best and go for it, awesome. But I always tell people, and athletes will laugh at me, like, if you're a true competitor, when you get up to brush your teeth, it's the best day you've ever brushed your teeth. Like, you are literally going to crush the way you brush your teeth. You might make the best cup of coffee you've ever had. I've never breathed the way I'm going to breathe right now and like think about how I'm going to attack my day. And what are the 2 things I'm going to just crush? And are they in my control? Right. And so it's like, it's understanding what it takes and staying dialed in and being your best. So those are 3. And then you could put those, and then it goes to your self-talk. Like, what am I telling myself? And then what is your belief? Do you believe you're never going to be good enough and you're comparing, or do you believe that you can, or do you have too much belief and there's not a lot of fact in there? Right. And then your environment really matters. What are people telling you? What kind of information have you been told over the years, ever since you were 2? So a lot of that all plays a part.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so much that I imagine this is why you have so many sessions with a lot of your athletes, is because it takes a long time to really unpack all of that. And some of it you don't want to at first. So I definitely understand that.
It's complicated. Make no mistake, it's complicated, but we are obsessed with uncomplicating it. That my team is. And to be able for me to articulate to a 13-year-old that's the art. I always say talk in crayons. Like, I want to talk in crayons because it's just bits and pieces. And then it's one step ahead. Do not dump all this on it. We just dial into certain things. We get to learn. Basically, I get asked really cool questions and I get to learn. That's all I do. Do I have strategies? Yes. But I always say you're the master of yourself and you've got to find a way through for yourself. I'm just here to guide you through it.
Yeah, I think that is really interesting. And you have mentioned in some of the I guess, strategies or things that you've already talked about. This is what I'll reference from when I talked to Bella about working with you very briefly. And I know obviously a lot of the conversations you two have are going to be personal, but she did mention that one of the things that's really helped her is reset words and this kind of concept. And so I wanted to get into some of these kind of little techniques and exercises that you use to help athletes in the moment, starting with reset words. Like, can you explain briefly what that means and how that can help? And again, you can do it from a more general perspective than just talking about Bella, but what does that mean?
So there's no athlete is the same. And there's many, many different ways. And I will share if you would like to hear from different athletes that we know that have talked about it. That's the cool thing about social media for us, because I get to talk about a self-talk strategy, and then I get to play Curry saying the same thing in his language, which is awesome. I'm basically a content creator for them. We understand the problem. Like, we talk about it and they're like, hey, if he struggles with it, you probably do too. So reset words, self-talk is having the awareness. Number one, if you don't have an awareness of what is going on in your brain, you have no focus. So you have to know you're crushing yourself in those moments. Reset words. So what Bella and I did is we come up with like core values. Like, who do I want to be as an athlete? Right? Like, what does that look when I'm playing my best, feeling my best, having the most fun? I'm watching you from the stands. Tell me everything that's going on. And we're not talking about scoring. There's no outcomes being based. But what am I seeing? What are you feeling? And what are you doing? And then in contrast, when you are not playing your best, tell me everything that's going on. And so it's like getting into there. And then, I try to get to the point where I'm like, hey, when were you really good at basketball? 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. I'm like, were you telling yourself you sucked after you missed a shot then? Or were you just competing? I was just playing. I was having fun. What's changed? All these stressors of expectations and this and that. So it's getting clear on a keyword. I'm not going to share her keywords unless she shares them of what we came up with. But George Kittle, football player, great tight end, puts a reset button on his wrist and hits it after every play. And the reason he does that is because sometimes I'm too high and sometimes too low. I need to be neutral. So I reset with a red reset after every play. He started that in college. Some athletes like to say, I put in the work. I deserve to be here. I'm the best. No one can stop me. If that's what they need to hear, that's what they need to hear. Some athletes do not like to tell themselves that. A lot of it gets into technical words like footwork, hips, wrist, right, as reset words. Some athletes that we've worked with will reset by the clock. Point guards like to reset by the clock. They'll look at the time. A lot of our athletes write fearless on their wrists, because when one athlete talk about it, we share it with the other one. All of a sudden we see people writing on their wrists fearless. And it's really a reset. It's like, what can you do to remind yourself every 5 to 7 seconds that you need to be back in the present moment? Mm-hmm. So it's understanding what you want to hear. And then I always say, tell me your favorite coach, mentor, someone that's really important to you. What would they tell you when you were stuck? And then it's usually the self-talk they want to hear. So within there, what can we use in here? And you're going to feel good about trying. And then we're going to try it. And did that work or did it not? And then we're going to track it. Journaling is a big part of what I do, because you have to have data on what we do, what worked, what didn't. So there's different ways. Every human is different, but we play a very powerful video from an athlete that talks about you have to talk to yourself like you're your best friend. Why would you try to beat yourself up? Does that really help you in the moment? Because it is a choice. It is a choice to be able to crush yourself or have your back, but none of that can happen if you don't have awareness.
Yeah, I think you make a really great point describing it as a process. And it isn't like you can't just go to a mindset coach or a sports psychologist and they don't just give you like the secret sauce and then you're all better and you have it all figured out. Like the idea that you're tracking what works and what doesn't work and reflecting on it constantly, like that in itself is like something you not necessarily have to get better at, but I guess get better at like understanding yourself and your own needs and stuff. So I think that's a really interesting perspective. Yeah.
No, I don't know how you can compete if not knowing yourself. Like I just don't know how. If you don't know how your emotions show up and how to work with them and what to do with them in those moments, mental toughness is about shoving your emotions to the ground. Mental toughness is accepting what happened and getting right back up and doing it again. It's accepting that you're getting punched in the face right now, and you know what? It's not working, but I'm going to get back up and I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it again. The teams and athletes that reset the quickest, it's a flat out advantage. And when you're playing at a Bella level, the margin for error is razor thin. The professional athletes we work with, we are trying to shave off milliseconds of resetting, right? So it's always trying to get better at that craft. And it's training your brain just like a muscle to get better at it. Awareness, I know I need this in this moment. I'm going back to it.
Do you have other, you've mentioned George Kittle already, but do you have other athletes that you use as like role model type of examples for how they kind of approach their like own mindset as an athlete that, I don't know if you share on social media a lot or you typically use in reference to your own clients? Like, I guess, who are some of your favorites that you think about?
So videos from everywhere. Like obviously I came from the music business. Like I'm a huge Rick Rubin guy. For all of you don't know him, he's one of the most, I think he did the Beastie Boys record. He's one of the Jay-Z, and he's done tons of artists. He's so recognized, and he comes from a place of mindfulness. So I love him. Every time he talks, he's just spitting out truth. But for the music business, I do listen to him a lot. Curry says a lot of good things. It just depends on the athlete. And there's a lot of female athletes that open up a lot more. And just to be like completely honest and transparent, like 85% of my clients are females, and that's 13 to 17. And for whatever reason, there is a willingness to get in the mud a little bit and to figure out a way. But also, another thing there's two other things I'll mention is perfectionism shows up a lot too. So that's also another thing that's a challenge, especially for the high performing female athlete, of trying to make everything perfect, because perfect just slows us down from being great. So that's another anchor. I always say we have these anchors around us, and how can we get rid of one anchor today, get that ship going again? And you said something earlier about, sitting down with the athletes, and at the end of each session, I will ask them like, hey, what did you like and what did you learn? And what do you think their favorite thing is that they usually say they like?
Maybe just like thinking about themselves more and like that sort of thing.
Talking. Think about that. Could you imagine being a 13-year-old and sharing that you suck at something? Having the vulnerability to say, I'm not great at this. And it feels terrible to say it, and I don't want to admit it. So you have to think about these athletes. They can't let their guard down and tell the coach I'm struggling with this, or they don't want to tell people. They have no one to talk to a lot of times. So if I can create a space where they can share their truth and they trust me, that's my job. And if they can find ways through it to better understand themselves, and it's different athletes from different sports at different times, So I don't have a favorite athlete. I'm just like, I spend a good amount of my day bookmarking things. Like if I'm teaching something that day, or I have somebody competing. Like I had someone have a big camp the other day, and I was like, Jameis Winston is just dropping some gems right now in self-talk. And I sent one of my favorite athletes, because he just doesn't take himself serious, but he comes from a place of good. But so it doesn't really matter. It's like good is good. And that's always been my thing. And basketball is kind of my thing, but training with a hockey player and baseball players and some other sports, and my partners dominate volleyball. Like that's where they started.
Yeah, I noticed that looking on your site. A couple of your partners, again, like kind of own that space. And also you're spread out. This isn't just a New England-based organization. Like you're spread out a lot in the Midwest and other areas of the country. What do you think about how New England is doing in accepting this as like a viable pathway to not only improving performance, but like improving general well-being too? And what do you think are the next steps to like getting this widely accepted?
That's a great question. Because if you knew what I knew, you would be training it. If everybody knew what I was doing, and if anybody's trying to do good in school, a musician, someone that dances, a runner, you'd be training. And if you're a coach or something, you'd be teaching this stuff. Emotional intelligence is the number one skill I think a coach has to have these days. It's just my personal opinion. And I grew up where there was zero of that, where there was none of this. There was no parents going to talk to coach about my playing time, or my coach would have probably just kicked me off the team. It was a different time. So we absolutely dominate the Midwest. So I'm from Nebraska originally. My partner lives in Nebraska, and he cut his teeth there back in the early 2000s at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. We've been working with Creighton basketball for a long time. And then we pretty much take the whole Midwest for volleyball. And then a lot of the college schools, the colleges are kind of all over. We have 4 SEC teams, and in gymnastics also, my partner does gymnastics. But then my other partner, Jess, lives in Arizona, but she's flying all over doing colleges too. But New England's I'm not going to lie, like we have not had any success in New England, but we never needed to until I moved here. But a lot of my clients are on Zoom anyway. So a lot of my clients are from the Midwest also, or, I'll plan trips where I will fly back and try to knock out some. But to be quite honest, it's been pretty tough to get dialed in out here. And we don't have a reason why. I don't really have an answer of why, but really what's been helpful for me, to be honest, was we worked with Marcus Zagorowski, which is Mandy's son, when he was at Creighton. Self-talk, he was one of the worst self-talkers ever. He would rap out loud he would sing out loud during games. That took his mind, they gave his mind a job to compete and not get stuck in his head. So Mandy has been having me work with the stars. So that's been pretty cool. And then through that, just kind of word of mouth, because it's a weird business. I can't say, oh my gosh, I work with this, and that. That's just not who we are. You would never really know who I work with. You won't know. It's just like a confidential thing because I have to build the trust. But if, people mention it, like Bella did mention it in the article, which was a beautiful article on her.
Thanks.
By the way, amazing human, going to be a winner no matter what she does.
Absolutely.
And, I always say if some of the best in the world are training their mind, why wouldn't we? So I don't understand, or I don't have a great answer of why we haven't really dominated out here. Maybe we just haven't tried, or people can figure it out on their own. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then I think the last thing I want to ask you about, we covered a lot of what I wanted to talk about kind of naturally through some other questions, but I'm sure you see this because you're online a decent amount. I feel like the biggest topic, especially in youth sports right now, there's an article probably once a week. I'm seeing another interesting article about the cost and the whole pay-to-play ecosystem. I think New York Magazine just came out with one either yesterday or Tuesday of this week or the week before. NBC News did a really good spot. We've written plenty about this. It's all over. Like everyone is talking about how much youth sports costs and what kind of pressure that places on families and then the trickle-down effect on athletes. I guess this is kind of a two-part question, but one, how much does that come up in your conversations with players is the trickle down of the financial pressure? And two, how do you change it?
That is a great question. It is a complicated one. I once again, I always start from a place as what is our goal? What is the goal of the athlete? And is it realistic? I know everybody wants to play at UConn and we want to go to the WNBA and NBA, but is that really realistic? And then it's having the vision of what does that look like? I always tell athletes basketball specifically, if you want to be great at basketball, I'm sorry, if you want to be more confident in basketball, be the best ball handler. Go get it where no one can take the ball from you. How are you not going to have confidence? Does that cost anything to go dribble the ball? No, it's not at all. I have two kids. I have twins, 13, which I've coached them since 4th grade. I'm finally stepping away. And they've both been in AAU, and not each club is created equal also, but you have to find what works best for you. But my vision and the way that I see things is I got to walk in the gym and be the worst person in the gym because I need other people to raise me up. I don't want to walk in the gym and be the best person because I can't grow. And so for me, I'm always looking for challenging environments of what that looks like for them. I think training is really underrated compared to all the game playing. So others will say you should play more game. I don't agree on that. I think I just heard a college coach say that kids don't care about winning or losing anymore because they go on these weekends and play 7 games and it's just another game. So that's a challenge when they get to college, that competition and that wanting to win is kind of a muscle that's went away. I have seen people go broke from it. They will dump everything into it, but I have no judgment. But the best advice I can say is, what is it? What is the goal of the athlete? What do they really, really want to do? And then what is the training around that? And do they have to play AAU? And do they need to play the circuit? Or or they just want to be their best and have fun, and they're going to go to college and get a degree, and maybe I want to play in college, maybe I don't. Well, everything looks different for everyone, And then, what I've learned is AAU just ain't going to do it for you. You have to do extra training, and that training is the athlete discipline to do it on their own, because that costs nothing if you can go outside and do it. Or, a low entry is to have a membership at a Y that has a gym where you could go do that. But for me, I've benefited from the AAU. I just think I've always had the vision, no, they got to be playing with really tough competition. I don't know if I answered that for you. I don't have a great answer for you. I mean, I think there's needs for them, 100%. I just don't know what it all looks like and I don't know every club any inside now.
Yeah. No, and I think it's hard because it's such a large topic and because it's complicated. Like I think we all write about the problem and we don't really have a like concrete roadmap of a solution yet. And that's like, I mean, it's okay for now. I'm sure everyone is thinking about it, but yeah, it's just like, this is kind of what the environment is for if you're raising a child or if you're the kid, like this is what it's going to be like for you to compete. And you kind of, again, like you kind of have to learn how to battle through it, which is what you teach.
I think if there was a lot more self-discipline and the athlete could go out there and do it 2 hours by themselves every day, that looks a lot different. I don't know who's doing that.
Yeah. Interesting.
Which costs nothing. I just don't know. I mean, I grew up, parents had to work all day. I'm at like 10 years old, and I just went out and got my head kicked in with a bunch of older kids playing basketball. And there was no, those were N1. I was like, no, I just got punched. Like I gotta get back up. And I feel like I learned a lot. I mean, I didn't play at a high level, but I think the playground thing is really missing.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that. Okay. I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. Unless you have anything else that you wanted to pass along while you have the platform, Scott, this is really great. I think I learned a ton from this, and I'm sure it'll be even more valuable for the families that are in the space right now. So yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this, for all the detail too. I think it's going to be really valuable for a lot of people.
No worries. I did want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I know you recently ran a marathon, right?
I did.
Or is it so you ran the Boston Marathon, right?
Yes.
Was that your first marathon?
That was my first one.
Were you ever a runner before?
I ran junior high cross country and I played ultimate frisbee. So, but not a serious runner. No.
Tell me why you decided to run the marathon.
I ran partially because I had covered the marathon previously when I was at the Boston Globe, and I thought it was just a really cool world to be part of. I wanted to run because I wanted to be in better shape. At first, that meant for me, if I could get to a 10K, I'd be happy. But then I had a bunch of friends who are marathon runners, and they said it's very doable. The fundraising aspect, I was very proud of the charity that I fundraised for. And so it was more like I wanted to kind of show that I could do something more than I thought I was initially capable of for myself. And so it was hard. It was really hard, but obviously super rewarding too.
Where would you put up finishing and crossing the finish line on that as greatest moments in your life? Where would you say that?
I mean, probably as far as just single moment achievement type things, that's probably at least top 5. I mean, it's definitely going to remember it all. I know a lot of people say they black out towards the end. I remember very much the last half mile to the 30 minutes after vividly, definitely is up there.
So what can we learn from your story is number 1 is you wanted a challenge. You made it bigger than yourself by combining a charity. But the biggest lesson in there is 75% of it was really freaking hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of your top 5 achievements. So what's the recipe in there?
That it's worth it to fight through the hard stuff. Yeah.
You're not going to get where you want when it's easy all the time. And I always tell my athletes, when you're really going for it, if it's fun, you're not training hard enough. It's not supposed to be fun. You're supposed to fail all the time. That is where the growth happens. You have to. So when you're 75% of the time doubting it, thinking about why am I doing this? Why did you keep your eye on the prize? Tell me why.
I think I just wanted to prove it to myself enough. I wanted to show I was capable. Yeah.
Me versus me. So you had a vision, you had something bigger than yourself that you felt like you weren't going to let them down. You embraced the hard. You did it. You were very present. And that's where all the emotions probably came out that last mile, where you were present in that moment when you say you remember it, correct?
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
So there's no secret. It's hard work, and it's having a vision and then the hard work. So cool. Congratulations. I ran one much slower than you did one time, but I learned a lot about myself in that hard because it was awful.
Yeah, it is, but it definitely is it's a cool life-changing moment to have. And yeah, thanks for helping me reflect on it. I reflect on it a lot, but again, that kind of shows you kind of demonstrated a lot of what is important right there. So thank you for doing that.
No, appreciate the opportunity. Love what you guys do. Hopefully we can collab later on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Yeah. I hope everyone enjoyed that. Neat for me to learn, do a little reflection of my own. Obviously, Scott has a lot of great advice for all of you out there. So thank you so much for listening. This episode will come out about the start of the school year. So I hope your first days of school are all going pretty well. And We will see you next time on the HoopWise Podcast.